Welcome in, Big Blue Nation, to another episode of the Cats Talk podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Johnston, joined by my co-host, as always, Jacob Boyers. Jake, Pitino versus Pope matchup, heavily anticipated. You were wrong. I had
I
to
was
call you
wrong.
out for it. You know you wanted to be wrong after you said that the Cats were going to lose down there in Atlanta. Mark Pope and these Kentucky Wildcats beat Rick Pitino and the St. John's Johnnies 78-66. And Jacob, I was there. This was an electric atmosphere for a lot of it. And you want to talk about a roller coaster of emotions from the tip off to the finish? Man, this thing was filled with storylines, filled with heartbreak, filled with rejuvenation. Anything and everything you can have in a basketball game, it seems like, was in this one. And it was an absolute pleasure to be there in person to witness it. Jake, what were you thinking sitting at home watching this game?
Ooh, I think you hit it. There's the roller coaster. I don't know if there's ever been a game that has swung so much. I mean, even last year with some of the big comebacks, like down 17 at Gonzaga and then coming back to win. But like this one, you talk about a full swing of emotions. I mean, you score 25 points in the first half, and it's in part because Jalen Lowe comes in and within 7 seconds of being on the floor gets injured and runs to the locker room. And I know all the BBNs saying it, but like you truly felt like the season was just done at that point. Like I did not expect we would see him back on the floor this year. Not only to see him again, but to see him just 15 minutes later there in the second half it's pretty insane. I mean, you score 25 points in the first half, 3 in the second. I think that alone just shows the impact of what Jalen Lowe means to this team, and we've talked about it at length before, but I think obviously Saturday was such a display of that. But just, the swing of emotions was absolutely insane. I went from just legitimately thinking the season was over and, this team's going to be a really, really poor team to now you got some hope and, you could see if this team can stay healthy. And I know that is a pretty big if with Lowe's shoulder, but like if they can stay healthy, you can see the real potential of what this team can do.
Yeah, and I think you actually start to see, we've been harping on the roster construction all season so far.
Yep.
I think you can start to see a little bit of what Coach Pope was looking for when he assembled this roster. Now, granted, I still think there are flaws in which they constructed this roster, but I think you mentioned it and hit it on the head there. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about Jaden Quaintance and how thoroughly dominant he was in his minutes that he played. But I think still, even with all that being said, the big storyline is Jalen Lowe. You mentioned he comes in for 7 seconds, and I'm sitting there watching the game. I'm there, and I see him immediately grab for the shoulder and just jog straight to the locker room. And I look around, and just at media row, it looked like everybody's souls had been snatched. It was just like here we go again. Obvious. I mean, you're not even thinking about him coming back in that game. You're potentially thinking about, is this something that's season ending? Is this when he finally calls it quits? Does he, protect himself for his own future here? But no, he comes back out in that second half. And just look at some of the differences between first half and the second half. You already mentioned 25 points in the first half to 53 in the second. 35% shooting in the first half versus 55% shooting. I mean, I think those numbers speak for themselves when it comes to what Jalen Lowe does for this team and how important he is just to get offenses started, because it's not like he was out there scoring a lot either.
Yeah.
Just how much having that pure, consistent ball handler and a guy who can get to a spot and facilitate for others really does for this team who doesn't have that as a backup option.
Yeah, and I mean, you watch without him, it's a absolutely dreadful offense, right? It's not like we're a mediocre offense that jumps to, a good one when he's on the floor. I mean, you go from an absolute putrid offense, a team that creates zero spacing, has zero real ball movement. They take a lot of really bad shots, and you go from that to a team that can put up 53 and a half against a Rick Pitino defense. Just like that by one player. And, I think it's insane. I mean, I think just the growth he's taken even from last year, you see how much better of a player he is and what he kind of brings to this team as opposed to what he was at Pitt a year ago. And I think it's just everything. Like, you talk about getting to his spots, finding guys. It's not obviously just the scoring, even though he did show a few times his ability to get to the rim and make a good finish. He, you know, the game just feels faster. We play at a much smoother tempo. Everything just feels that much more smooth and cohesive. Because, like, in that first half, I was pretty disappointed with kind of whatever our game plan was to beat the press, because I don't feel like there was a game plan.
We
But,
didn't
like,
have one in the second half really either.
yeah, but, like, especially in the first half without Lowe, like, we were getting the ball up at 22 seconds constantly, and trying to work from there with a bad offense. And I think there were obviously still some turnovers, and I thought some poor inbound plays, but at least when Lowe kind of got the ball, he was able to quickly get it up court, and you were able to kind of get into what you were doing, a little faster than 8-10 seconds into the shot clock. So I just think all those little things, he really does just flip everything. The tempo, the ability to score, just everything kind of shifts with him. And I thought he would be extremely important to this team. Now you're seeing he is by far, I think, the most valuable player for this team, and the guy that you can't lose. And it stinks that it's the shoulder, because we've seen him hurt it on 3 separate occasions now. The blue-white game, practice, and then Saturday. So, like, the odds tell you, like, it's probably going to get tweaked again. But, as much as he can play, I think is really the difference for how good this team can be this year.
Yeah, and I mean, really what you just said is it's what we're going to be saying all year. Something we're going to keep repeating ourselves throughout every game for the entirety of this season. I mean, some of the notes that I just had jotted down from this game, I mean, in the first half, St. John's only had 32 points. Anytime you hold somebody to 32 points in a half, you think, all right, cool, we're going in with like an 8-point lead going into halftime. No, Kentucky was still trailing down. They were still down 7 going into half. They scored 18 points in the first 16 minutes of the half. I mean, dude, it was honestly one of the worst offensive displays I think I've ever seen. They had 10 turnovers with 5 minutes left in the half. They were consistently turning the ball over. You mentioned they weren't able to break the press. And I know when you come in expecting Jalen to play a lot, you kind of expect him to be able to be that press beater. But you also knew that this shoulder can pop out, or it can slide or rotate at any time, and you're going to need that backup option. So I was as frustrated as you were with not having that, especially from somebody like Coach Pope, who knows nobody knows what Rick's wanting to do more than Mark Pope. So for him to not come in with some sort of game plan as to how to beat that, and I think that's something that really held us back in the first half, of not having anybody who could beat that press. And really, without that press, I don't know if St. John's is even as close in this game as they were. Like, that was how majority of their offense was gained. I mean, they had a lot of points in transition, and outside of that, dude, I really just felt like from the second half on, and I get there's a whole first half that we have to look at and acknowledge. But Jaden Quaintance and Otega Owe were the only reasons you were in the game in the first half. Like, if you take those two out, like, I thought Otega played phenomenal in that first half.
I did too.
I thought without him that we don't even have a chance to get back in that game. It might be one of those games that at halftime you're talking about potentially not even putting Jalen back out there for the risk. But since we were able to keep it that way with Otega having a strong end to the first half, it allowed you to stay close and bring in guys like Jalen and Jaden. That's going to be tough to say all season, those back-to-back. But getting those guys on the floor, because, I mean, let's go ahead. Let's have the Jaden Quaintance talk now, Jacob. I mean, the guy comes in and immediately changes the game. He hits a turnaround bank shot, gets an offensive rebound in a block within his first 2 possessions on the floor. I mean, I don't know how you can make a better impact just from the start, and then obviously he continued it throughout the entire game.
Yeah, you saw top 5 pick right there, and it was on full display at his first game back from an ACL, meniscus, knee injury. Like, unbelievable. I mean, you talk, and like, I kind of was excited to get JQ back, but there was a worry with me just because you see it a lot, guys coming off an ACL. It's usually, they can get back and play, but it usually takes them half a season to even a full year in some cases to really get back to where they were before that. And not only did he get back to where he was at Arizona State last year, I mean, he was better. This was probably the best game of his college career in 15 minutes against probably the best competition he's going to play. I mean, we were talking about how, Zuby, we weren't going to have an answer for, and he was going to kill us. And you kind of saw that a little bit in the first half. But man, I mean, an 18-year-old Jaden Quayton's had him scared. He was seeing ghosts out there. I mean, I text you, for an 18-year-old, he is a man. Like, he's way stronger than I realized. I'm sure he put on some just because probably all he could do was lift weights for 6 months. But, like, he is just a specimen. And to go out there and get those dunks and get those rebounds and blocks, I mean, just back to the defense in general, man. I mean, we talked about it after Indiana, how well they played. That was a team that came in and dropped 110 against Penn State the week before they played you. I mean, St. John's was still averaging like 87 points a game coming into this, and you hold them to 66 with 27 of those coming at the free throw line. Like, we really made it extremely difficult. And I think just even in the 15-ish minutes that, Quayton's played, you saw just like how much of an uptick this defense can have. And, I thought they played obviously good defense in the first half, but it felt like we were smothering them in the second half. If they weren't getting to the free throw line, it didn't feel like they were going to score.
Yeah, I felt like one of those just key moments in the game is when Ejiofor tried to back down Jaden Quayton's one-on-one in the second half there. Just has nowhere to go, and then takes a contested shot. Obviously, Jaden sends it back. I mean, this is a guy you're talking about who – first thing I thought of, Jake, and I don't know if you've ever seen this video. If you remember Zach Randolph and DeMarcus Cousins beefing, going back and forth, and Zach Randolph looks at Boogie and says, "In my hood, bullies get bullied." That's the first thing that popped in my head when I thought of that matchup, and Jaden Quayton's was the bully in this one. And to see somebody who we know about the athleticism, we know about the spring in his step, how fast he is for how big he is. But you mentioned that strength aspect of his game. You've seen the visual pounds that he's put on during the offseason, but it's also, you want to see how it translates to a game atmosphere. I'm not sure if there's anybody in the NCAA that you can put him up against that theoretically would have tested him more than Zuby Ejiofor would have. And, I mean, he answered the call in more ways than one. I mean, Ejiofor did nothing in that second half and was basically a non-factor for the rest of that game.
Yeah, Quayton's, it was, I think we were texting each other and you said it, like, he's everywhere on the floor, and he really was. But that strength that he's, and the extra weight he's put on has obviously not slowed down his athleticism, right? And for a guy that's coming off a significant knee injury, put on all that weight, you would expect him to probably play a little slower than he did a year ago, and he's nowhere close. I mean, he's still flying around all over the place, and a couple of those rebounds, just throwing guys to the ground, grabbing a rebound and dunking, it was like we were watching a mix of Anthony Davis and Shaquille O'Neal out there. It was pretty special, and you obviously see the NBA potential that everybody else kind of saw, and you really just kind of see it on full display. And I mean, if he plays like this for the majority of the year, this is a top 5 pick.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't even know if that's up for debate. I mean, this is a game and he kind of mentioned it in his press conferences today. At no point was his number called on the offensive side of the ball. Everything that he got on the offensive side of the ball was him strictly dominating off of the offensive rebounds. I mean, he had 3 putbacks, obviously hit that turnaround where, Jake, I'm not sure, from my angle, I'm not going to say he was trying to bank that in. I'm just going to throw that out. I don't care. His first shot as a cat went in, so I'm all here for it. But this is an example of how dominant he can be without needing the ball. And I think that's something that this team needed, because we've mentioned Ortega has to have the ball to be dominant. Jalen Lowe has to have the ball to be dominant. A lot of these guys have to have the ball on the offensive side of the ball for their game to click. This is a guy who really gets his game started on the defensive side of the ball and then crashing the boards. And you see how much this athleticism is something. I mean, Jake, when we talk about UK and athletes that we've had in the past 5 years, where does he rank? I mean, he's got to be.
Oh, last 5 years? I mean, yeah, he's up there. He might be number 1.
That's what I'm saying. And this is a guy we're talking about just seeing him his first game after that surgery. First game against a highly anticipated matchup in Atlanta, in Catlanta, and he answered the bells in every single way. And honestly, like I had high expectations for Jaden Quaintance. I think mine were probably a little bit higher than everybody else's. And what he did on Saturday afternoon still blew me away because I thought there was going to be some growing pains, some like, all right, we still do have to get him integrated in
Yeah.
with this team. He still has to find out, what he can do, what he can't do, all of this. But dude, you want to talk about hitting the ground running? That's what our man JQ did.
But like, and to your point, he didn't come in and like force anything. He didn't try to come in and be some dominant, you know, ball presence on the offensive side of the ball. He just kind of came in and made plays where he could. Got a couple, offensive rebounds and dunks, or worked the ball around. I thought he also made some really good passes, but it just felt like he truly let the game come to him. And again, as an 18-year-old playing in, I know he played college basketball a year ago, but like this is by far the biggest game and probably the best competition he's played. And to come in and really just kind of let the game come to you in that situation and not get over anxious and, rush things. I think it shows that for such a young player, he's obviously extremely mature as well. I'll say the other thing just about this team in general, right? We were talking about like different lineups and like who do you play. I'll tell you what, man, if everybody's healthy, and I know that's a big if right now, if everybody's healthy though, but like I legitimately think now Pope's got 3 guys that when healthy, you have to play 30 minutes. And that's going to make it a lot harder on him, right? To go as deep as maybe Pope would quote unquote like, but like JQ, Lowe, and Ortega have to be on the floor and they got to be out there, I think, when healthy, 30 plus minutes, 15 and a half easily.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I have my 5. I have my guys that
I
I
think
want
we're
to
probably going to agree.
It's the same 5 that I told you last week.
Yeah.
Surprisingly enough, obviously, health is the biggest factor, and I think Pope probably knows that lineup he wants to use the most. But I think what we're seeing a lot of this is just how many guys were playing so out of position and so out of a way in which prohibits their best basketball from being played. We've obviously beat to death how much different Ortega plays when he's playing at that 2 guard. I mean, even in the second half, how good was he not having to, run some of the point there? And a guy that I want to mention because Jake, I said a guy, sneaky guy to watch in this game. I talked about him. I kind of set it up to a T. I said he's going to
I'm
hit a
ready
couple,
to talk about him.
knock down some big shots, and that's Cam Williams. And him playing at the 3, allowing, and granted, that can be Mo Diabate at the 4. You can call whoever the 3 or the 4 in that. But allowing him to truly play in that position where he doesn't have to be a bruiser, doesn't have to, match up with guys theoretically like Bryce Hopkins or, ones that stylistically would give him a fit, is allowing him to do so much right now. And I think with the addition of JQ, especially back there, you're talking about 2 superb athletes with him and Cam. It just makes this team so much better. And I think that's the starting 5 that you have to roll with. And those are the guys that honestly I think have to give you the most minutes because it's crazy to say, like, you look at that lineup and you're like, we still don't have a great shooting lineup.
Yep.
That might still be your best shooting lineup that you're going to have and run out there. Denzel Aberdeen is, in all, like, I've obviously been the lowest man on Denzel Aberdeen throughout this entire season, and it's probably going to stay there. Right now, man, I think these are just cardio minutes for him. I think he's really giving you kind of like the Tony Snell treatment. I like him as a backup option to where if Lowe's in foul trouble, you need somebody to give Ortega a breather. But I think he's going to have to find a way to be a knockdown shooter of some sort. Like, he's got to find a way to shoot the ball at a high clip to earn these minutes on the floor because I don't know what else he's bringing you.
It's funny because for really start of the year and most of the year, we've kind of talked about like who's going to get squeezed out and play a lesser role. Will it be, Colin Chandler or Denzel? And like now I think there's a real world where it's kind of both of them, right? And, to say that like a month and a half ago when Chandler was looking like our best player on the team, like it's pretty crazy. And I still think Colin can play a lot of really good minutes, but I do agree with you. Like that's easily your best lineup. And you've seen it really 2 games in a row now, obviously minus JQ, but like Lowe, Ortega, Cam Williams, and Diabate kind of being out there. I mean, that's the lineup. He went with those four down the stretch against Indiana. Obviously, went with those four plus JQ here. Like, I think it's a threat to be your best lineup. And to your point, it's probably not the best shooting lineup on paper, but you know, you don't have anybody theoretically that's making shots anyway. So you might as well just go with who's going to play the best defense, who, if open, can knock down open threes. We've talked about it. Ortega's hitting threes when open at a decent clip. You know, Cam Williams finally knocked a couple down. Hopefully that's just kind of what he needed to see to spark it. I think Lowe hit one. You got enough to where they have to respect it. And here's the thing. You may not be the best offensive team, but when you got JQ down there and Mo Diabate, you're going to grab a lot of offensive rebounds, a lot more than other teams, and get some, you know, chances at second chance points. And I agree. I think that's just the lineup you gotta roll with, and then obviously Colin and Denzel playing backup roles, helping out where they can, and then you kind of rotate the bigs of, you know, Malachi and BG, who I thought played pretty well. I thought, you know, I've always been a big proponent of not playing two bigs. I think I made that pretty clear last year even, but I like even seeing JQ and BG out there together. I think just because of, you know, JQ's versatility, I think makes that a lot easier to do. But, you know, I thought even at times that could be a solid lineup. So when you need to give Mo a break, I don't think you necessarily have to slide Cam down and bring in one of those guards. I think you could bring in one of the bigs.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of hit on that versatility of JQ and it allowing you to play two bigs, because it really reminds me of, and, you know, I texted you this, and I don't want Big Blue Nation to take this and run with it, but it really does. The versatility that he has offensively and defensively, it's almost like you don't have another big out there. Like he offers you so much defensively, and then on the offensive end, it is like you have a big, but he can also get out and move. And honestly, unselfishness, you brought it up earlier as well, you know, being able to do whatever the team needs game by game basis. And obviously, we're putting a lot into one game. But dude, it reminds me a little bit of Anthony Davis. Again, I know, lofty comparison there. I'm telling you, Jake, that's the first signs that I got when I saw that. I thought of like physically, I thought of like Anthony Davis when he finally put on some weight in New Orleans towards the end of his New Orleans career. And got me excited. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not be?
Everything that I saw from JQ, I love. But I'm glad you brought up Malachi Moreno too, because outside of a couple of defensive lapses with Zuby Ejiofor, which we kind of mentioned before this game, that's something we didn't want to put him in that kind of situation because we knew that was something Ejiofor was going to kind of feed off of. He had a couple baskets there in a row to get himself going before that. But Malachi, I thought, was tremendous in this game. He had strung together a couple of bad games back to back before this one. To start off the game with a block and send that back, and then to get 9 rebounds, 8 points on 4-6 shooting, 2 blocks. I mean, I think for a true freshman facing off against Ejiofor and Bryce Hopkins, I think this guy gave you more than you could have even asked for.
Yeah, I thought he was really good. And, like, you know, you mentioned it. We talked about we didn't think this is obviously the matchup for him, but I thought just him coming out and obviously showing that he wasn't scared and, you know, had the big block and kind of got everybody fired up. An underrated stretch that, like, I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about. I mean, that stretch to start the second half where he had like 6 straight points or whatever, like that was huge. Yeah, that got you back in it. It really kind of had you treading water until you brought Lowe in there a couple minutes into the second half. I mean, that was a huge stretch. And again, I think he did have like 6 of our 8 points to start the second half or something. So you mentioned it again, and 9 rebounds, and then again, BG, I don't have his exact stat line here. I don't know what it looks like, but I thought just another game from the eye test, he looked really good. And I think this is kind of the role you're going to see him. We've talked about it for 2 years now. Where he can probably be the best is in that like 10 to 12 minutes. And you saw him play exactly right at 12 minutes here on Saturday. But like when he was out there, it felt like he was constantly, you know, had the motor going. He was a lot of different places. I think that's the perfect amount of Brandon Garrison, and I think you saw him kind of really fit that role. And if you can keep him engaged and keep him willing to play a role where he's only getting 10 to 12 minutes, then I think you can have something really special off the bench.
Yeah, the thing about Brandon Garrison that is always going to drive me crazy is I don't want to say his unwillingness to rebound, but you just look at like a game 12 minutes from your like rebounder when he's out on the court. I can't have you only getting 2 rebounds. Like we see it from Malachi, played 21 minutes, got 9 rebounds. JQ plays 18 minutes and gets 8 rebounds in that time as well. So I mean, these are the guys that you're going up against 4 minutes. Brandon does have to start the rebound, I think, at a higher clip. But you mentioned, I think you have to find whatever works. You have to find 30 minutes probably between Malachi and Brandon Garrison. Whoever is giving you more juice in that game, I think kind of has to be who you roll with, because I can see games where Malachi performs like this, and he's going to be the guy that you want to go with and run out there with JQ, or to give JQ a spell. And then there's going to be games, I mean, we all know there's been BG games where he'll just randomly go off for 14 points and grab you 7 rebounds in 20 minutes. And you're like, where the hell has this guy been? I mean, that's kind of been the Brandon Garrison experience. So, Jake, this game, I mean, we're prisoners of the moment, obviously.
Yep.
After each game, this is the best that I've felt about this team in some time.
Oh, no doubt.
Obviously, we have a lot to look forward to with, how certain guys played, because, I mean, outside of Denzel Aberdeen and Colin Chandler, I don't think there's anybody that you can be upset with how they played.
No, and I think you're starting to see the rotation come to form. We're really starting to see who needs to be out there. Again, this whole season, I think we both agree it's really just going to depend on injuries. Can Jalen Lowe somehow miraculously not injure his shoulder again? If so, I think you see that this team has potential to be a good team. Again, I don't think they're national championship level good, but you see the ability to be a really solid team. And I think it's obviously all just going to come down to health. But yeah, I mean, by far the best we've felt since probably we beat Purdue, in the preseason.
Easily, yeah.
So, I mean, I think you're starting to figure out the rotation. No offense. I mean, we're not seeing Yelovich out there anymore. We're not really seeing Trent Noah get more than a couple minutes. The rotation's getting squeezed. And I think you can put 5 solid players into a lineup. Now, we'll see how it works when you play against a team that can score a ton, but maybe we're just really good defensively, because like I mentioned, St. John's was averaging, high 80s. Indiana was averaging, right around that mark too. You held both of them in check under 70. So maybe this team is just a lot better defensively than even we act like.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to get that test here, not this Saturday, but next against Alabama.
Yep.
So we'll get that answer on whether it's just these teams or if it's, or the defense is just that good. You kind of mentioned Trent Noah. I don't know if he could have put out a worse performance for himself to try and get more minutes and put himself.
Yeah, I think the Trent Noah experience is over.
Yeah. I think this was the final nail in the coffin. I think it was already there, honestly, but I think this was kind of that. I mean, 3 minutes, he had 2 turnovers and a foul in those 3 minutes. I mean, he made them count. I mean, not for the ways that you'd want, but he did make them count. And then Jasper Johnson, I think that's going to be a back and forth all season long. But I do kind of want to have that debate with you, because I think we would both agree on our starting 5 that we mentioned before just a little while ago. Who do you want to play that backup point guard role? Because I think we talked about this a little bit before the last game. I mean, who do you want to do that? Because right now you're looking at between Colin Chandler, Denzel Aberdeen, and Jasper Johnson. Those minutes are going to be cut tremendously between the 3 of them. So who do you want out there getting those minutes?
Well, so I said you got to play Jalen 30 plus when he's healthy. So let's just say there's 10 minutes to go around. I mean, honestly, I don't feel good about any of them. I would probably still lean towards Denzel. I think especially if it's just 5 minutes a half, it probably doesn't kill you as much. You might go through a couple minute drought where you don't score, but I probably feel better about that. Like, no offense, I really haven't seen anything other than like a couple small stretches out of Jasper. And maybe it's just he hasn't gotten the, the run to really kind of get in stride and, you know, consistently get to the point he should be at. But like, I don't see a 5-star freshman when I look at Jasper. I don't see that translating at all. I mean, he looks like a guy that could be a really good, solid player down the line, but like, I don't personally see anything that really leans me towards thinking like this year he's going to be some big contributor. Maybe you disagree, but that's just kind of where my head's at with it.
Yeah, I mean, for my personal opinion, I think you've seen enough of what you have in Denzel Aberdeen. Like this is a senior. This is a guy who has played enough. I don't think you can expect a jump from him, like at all. I think what you have is what you're getting. I mean, right now he's shooting, what is it? He's shooting 32% from three. I mean, even Jasper, who you mentioned, not a 5-star guard, or he doesn't look up to that billing. And for the most part, I'd agree with you. Doesn't seem to have that lateral quickness that you would expect from a guard to be ranked that high. Doesn't have that athleticism really either.
Yeah.
Even all that being said, he's still shooting 34%, so still shooting a little bit higher from three from him. And like neither one are playmakers. I don't think either one are great on the defensive side of the ball. I'd honestly just rather roll with Jasper until he forces you to take him out, just because at the end of the day, we mentioned this about Colin Chandler last year. Like we didn't see anything from Colin Chandler until about February. And then from February to March, he was one of the better players on the team and he had that confidence going forward. I'd rather try and instill that in Jasper rather than Denzel, who I think we all know what we have.
I do want to get your thoughts a little bit on Colin. Like, what do you make of it? Because obviously, to start last year, he looked unplayable. We've talked about it. Started to play a little bit better in February, and then by March, he was one of probably your best 5 players. And then to start this year, at times he looked like your best player, and we all saw that Colin Chandler year 2 jump that we've talked about. And I mean, I thought back to Saturday, like he was back to looking a little like timid and like even kind of scared to shoot at times. I don't know. Like, do you just think like the Colin Chandler experience is just going to be a roller coaster? Is that just the kind of player he is, or what do you make of it?
I've been always a little hesitant on the 3-point shooting that I think Colin displayed in the first 8 games of the season. I think I expressed that to you. Just the shot shape changes so much game to game. There's some where it's line drives, and in the other games he's throwing those moon balls. But I really don't know. I mean, you look at it, and part of you says, well, all those shooting numbers came from playing, Northern Illinois and Nicholls State and teams like that. And in the bigger games, he didn't really show up with that 3-point shot. I don't know, man. I think it might just be a lack of confidence thing. I think
Really,
he's going to be one of those guys that you're just going to have to ride with it. However high his confidence is however good he's going to play. Like you saw it in March Madness last year, confidence was high. He was hitting threes, and he was a big part of that team. But I think a lot of what Colin Chandler does, kind of similar to Otega Owe, they're both good athletes. They both need to start on the defensive end making those plays. Because if you remember how Colin Chandler really got going last year, it was that he put on a pretty good defensive performance against Arkansas, against Cal. And that really started to jolt his season forward. He started getting more minutes, playing more, feeling more comfortable, getting his feet under him. I think there's a lot of guys on this team that defense turns to offense, and a lot of it starts on that end of the court.
Yeah, I mean that could be the case. I've agreed with you. I didn't think he was like our best shooter or anything, and I thought the Colin Chandler that was shooting 55% from behind the arc probably wasn't going to stay. But to see him get back to just being timid, I think is what's kind of disappointing for me. Right? I thought we were at least past that stage, and also like you don't see him looking to attack as much like he was last year at times. Like he's not getting to the rim. I mean, really in Indiana and St. John's, we didn't see it at all. I don't know if we've really seen it since he missed that one against North Carolina to tie the game. I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a confidence thing, but it's definitely something I hope he can get over, because I do think obviously a good Colin Chandler is still probably your best option of a 6-man or even potential starter at times on this team. So yeah, I hope whatever it is, it kind of gets figured out and he gets back to playing that not super aggressive, but just the normal aggressive Colin Chandler and doesn't look timid.
Yeah, I think a lot of it could also just be explained to the fact that his role has changed so much game to game
That's
on a
true.
game basis of
Yeah.
like what he's needed and what he's expected to do. So maybe if we just have a consistent run of, 5 to 6 games where he just knows this is what the team needs from me for the team to win. Maybe it's something as simple as that. Early in the season, he knew in those games he just needed to be a 3-point shooter and play good defense. And when he did get the ball, attack the rim and show off that athleticism. I think during, that Gonzaga, North Carolina stretch where we are playing teams like that, we asked him to do a lot more, obviously
Yeah.
without Jalen and with those guys. And he kind of succumbed to the pressure, wasn't able to fulfill those roles. And also, we've mentioned, it's so hard for anybody to score in that offense with how stagnant it was. With Denzel, Ortega, and Colin all out there at the same time, I don't think any of the three were succeeding when it was like that. So I think you have to
Yeah.
find a way for one of the two of them, Denzel and Colin, just has to be somewhat of a spark off the bench. I think is really what you need one of those two to be. I don't care which one it is. You would assume it would be the senior guard and not the sophomore guard, but I do need one of those two to step up and really kind of just take ownership of the being the leader off the bench, because there's value to that. I mean, obviously, you think about the 2012 team and Darius Miller, how valuable he was coming off the bench and how much how crucial he was to that team. If you're planning on making any sort of deep run in the postseason, you need a guy like that, and I'd love for one of those two guys to step up and be that.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope we get to that point. And, it is funny. This team doesn't like each other and everything. You win a couple games and all that kind of goes out the window. But I will say, it does feel like they're all just playing with a different level of energy. And there's obviously more fun around this when you're winning. But, I think JQ on Saturday was a huge part of that. I think Jalen's a huge guy for that. So to your point, if you could get one of those guys to kind of be that off the bench when we get to that point where they're coming off the bench like we kind of think they will, then I think it's huge, and you can constantly hopefully have one of those guys out there on the floor at all times.
Yeah, and I don't want to say I think the ceiling of this team has changed, but I do think the floor, if you stay healthy, has risen a lot from what we had seen the previous 3 games before this.
Yeah.
And a lot of having a top 5 pick obviously changes a lot. And just we're talking about how excited we've seen or how excited we've been with this team's defense. Imagine when you're facing guys who like Ladarian Philon, who are going to try and get to the rim, and you have JQ there to prevent a shot or change the trajectory of a shot. All these little things that you don't think of. Like Cam Williams even mentioned it in his interview today. He's like, a lot of the times you just don't want to go around the rim because JQ's there. And even if it's in the back of your head that he's there, and he's somebody almost going back to a Willie Cauley-Stein and an Nerlens Noel, that even if they're not having a huge offensive output, they're having a huge input on the game with defensively changing shots. Because Jake, that's something we haven't had in a while.
No. And I think the other thing, what really takes that even to another level is the fact that you have a Mo Diabate who's an extremely good rebounder on the other side. Because what's the biggest downside to a big time shot blocker? It's that a lot of times they go for a block, don't get it, and then they're left with their man getting an offensive rebound, right? And when you have such a good rebounder there with Diabate on the other side, I think there's zero hesitation. Not to say JQ would have been hesitant anyway, but there's zero hesitation. He can go for every block. If he doesn't get it, you got a solid rebounder down there to clean up after him. And, I do think, you said, your floor rose, my floor and ceiling rose because, man, after Gonzaga, I was looking up, NIT tickets for this team. I did not expect, I said, and I'm meant it at the time. I thought we were worse than the COVID team, and we were probably right there. You put that team against Gonzaga versus the COVID team, and it probably would have been a pick 'em, I think, because we brought up all the reasons. We don't need to go back in time, but it's crazy how much one and now two guys just completely changed the outlook for an entire team.
It's really as simple as that. I tweeted that
It's
like
night and
literally
day.
right after the game. It's crazy the difference that two guys make. But I mean, think about it just in this way. Like, these were supposed to be your two best players on the team. I mean, you can kind of just boil it down to as simple as that. These are supposed to be two of your best players, if not two of your best three, if you want to put Ortega in there.
By far, your two biggest portal gets.
Yeah, without a doubt. But I also kind of wanted to mention something you just hit on there. We're talking about like JQ going for those blocks and opening for potential like rebounds. When we're talking about like the lineup that we want to have where Cam Williams is running the three, I was talking about a pretty good rebounder and a hell of an athlete to have at your three to go get rebounds as well.
Ortega too. Both of them on the wing.
The thing is like the thing I love about that lineup, dude, you know how fast up and down the court you can get with those five guys? Like each one of those guys has, I mean, the slowest might be Mo. And that's a guy
by far. I think it's. I don't think it's might. I think it is, and it's not a bad. It's not.
I think that's what you need from a like defense first team is obviously protect the rim. You got that in JQ. The ability to rebound defensively. You have Mo for that. Obviously JQ as well, and then Cam Williams adding that support. And then it's to get out on the run and get out on the move. Imagine Jalen and then Ortega coming at you on a 2-on-2 break. And all of a sudden, Cam Williams is there for a spot up three, and he starts hitting them like he is at this time. I think, like, I'm going to continue to talk myself into this team more and more. Obviously, as they win, that's just how it works. But Jake, I'm so ready to see this team against Alabama. I want to see this team healthy, playing against Alabama, because obviously, Bama is one of the favorites to win the SEC. It's a team that we have traditionally had struggles against with Mark Pope. But, you and I have talked about it. This isn't really a traditional Mark Pope team. This is not what he's used to putting together his rosters like.
Yeah, and real quick, back to your, that lineup in transition. I mean, you saw it on Saturday. The exact scenario you just lined up was how Cam knocked down both of his threes. I mean, if you watch the one, there was like two guys that ran with I think it was JQ that was kind of cutting to the basket, and they both went to him, and, you're trying to stop ball with Jalen having it. And next thing you know, like you said, Cam Williams is right there for a pull-up three in transition. And there's just so much. You got pretty much three guys that can run to the rim, and you got to be scared in them with Ortega, Lowe, and JQ. And then you can have a spot-up shooter and Cam Williams to go out there. I agree. It's huge. When it comes to Bama, I do think I'm very intrigued to see that lineup, see how they perform against Bama. I think they can probably still score enough, but like it's not going to be like, when you beat Florida last year 103 to 100 or whatever, like you're probably going to have to beat a team like Alabama or Florida, probably like, mid 80s to low 80s or something. But like I do think, I mean, again, we saw them drop 53.5. Like that's not, you saw even we saw it a little bit in that Louisville game, right? Like we still scored 80 something in that one. Like, so I think like this team it's insane to think one player in Jalen Lowe is that important between you scoring 53.5 or you're struggling to go out there and score in the mid 20s.
Yeah, and that's 53.5 with only hitting 3 threes as well. Like, that's also the crazy part. Like, think about granted, it's still a huge if, but think about if Cam does start shooting more and starts hitting more of those. If Colin does get back to that early season form and starts hitting those. If Denzel and I feel like I'm crushing the guy, but like if he adds you like any value at all. And then we were talking about like Ortega's hitting 35% of his threes right now. You expect like one of those to fall per game. You start talking about this team's actually going to be able to score the ball pretty well as long as they can stay healthy. And Rick Pitino kind of came after the media a little bit after the game, talking about,
Yeah, we got classic Rick after he lost, man.
Yeah, he went. There was only like one St. John's reporter in there, and he went after that guy for whatever reason. I felt bad for the guy. Everybody in the media room was like looking around like, Why'd you pick on that guy to go after? But I mean, to his credit,
we
yes.
gotta we gotta
Do
blow
we need to
by it.
have do we need to have a big picture view of everything? Yes. But also, Jake, you and I come on here after every single game. I can't tell you, yeah, they lost by 40 to Gonzaga, but they're missing a lot of guys.
Yeah,
No,
no,
we still got to have, and a lot of the reasons why we were so frustrated wasn't because they were missing Jalen or they were missing JQ. These are things that they can't control. It was the effort that was put on the court. And that effort on the St. John's game, like at the end of the game, there was like 3 minutes left. These guys are diving all over the floor for loose balls. These guys are getting dirty. They're working for rebounds. Night and day difference between what you saw against Gonzaga. And that's the reason why I think the media was more up in arms than what Rick made it to believe.
can we still talk about one? We got classic Rick, the Rick that kind of made us hate him after the loss. There were a few moments. I did find his little jab pretty funny. That was one of the things. Like my dad was working and wasn't watching it, and I called him after the game, and I was like, he did have a good little one-liner. I guess you didn't see it because you were there, but they asked him, right after the first scuffle, it was his turn to talk in the timeout right after, and they're like, what do you think about the chippiness? And he said something like, we're all choir boys over here. We're just good Catholic boys. That's all them. I thought
Yeah,
I thought that one was pretty funny, but like, I do think, I mean, you saw him. He was a little salty. He blowed by in the handshake line with Pope. He, you know, wasted no time to kind of go after the media and everything else. I think we saw it. But can we just briefly talk about the fact they kicked a man out for scoring a basket on Saturday? Like, 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 in what world? And I know like Zuby got all mad about it that he scored. Listen, I think it's lame to whine if a team scores no matter what. But you cannot whine if you're sitting there and pressing with 20 seconds left. You're
no kidding.
you're saying that like we're still playing this game, we're still trying to, get a turnover. You don't get to then cry because someone, we finally for the first time beat your press and get an open layup. Like I thought that was incredibly lame. And then the fact that they teed Mo up is mind-boggling, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you saw most comments on it after the game. The same guy gave him both of his technicals. Obviously,
Yeah.
he's still upset and frustrated with it. But you mentioned, I mean, first off, I don't think really either one of them should have gotten teed up because I mean, it's
No,
just them
it was-
talking. Separate them and inbound the ball, and the game's over. Shouldn't have been technical fouls for either one. But I mean, edge of four. I mean, dude,
He got embarrassed. He got embarrassed a little bit Saturday. Like
he
he
did
thought he
definitely.
was going to come in and have his way against 18-year-old Malachi Moreno, and then all of a sudden he went up against an 18-year-old man. In the words of Vince Marrow, a GROAN grown man.
Yeah, we don't need to bring
I had to
Vince
give a
Mann
little.
up.
I had to give a little. I had to
We
give a
don't,
little shot at
we don't
Vince
need to
and his
bring we don't need to
and
bring up
his
that
spelling
bum.
his spelling bee title, but
We don't need to bring up that bum down there in Louisville. But Jake,
just a shot, just a little shot here and there.
well, that's why I called him a bum right there. I need to get him a little shot. But is there anything else that you took away from the St. John's game? Any big overarching things that you took? Because if anything that I took away, this fan base is still 125% behind this team, and
Oh
they
yeah,
always will be. I mean, Kentucky fans, while when it does get negative, it will get toxic. That's every single fan base. I heard
yeah.
people talking about that. Like even Ohio State, who lost to North Carolina in a traditional fashion, who, Jake, I'm not kidding you. I walked around the entire bowl looking for an Ohio State fan. I did not find one.
You had one
Crazy.
sitting next to you in media row.
It was crazy work to not be able to find one. But like even their fans,
Yeah.
like it's how sports work in today's society. Everybody has a voice on Twitter, on wherever you sound off. Everyone has a voice, including you and I, who are both just two idiots sitting here recording. Everybody has a voice. It's going to be made public. But Big Blue Nation is fully behind this team. And man, if you would have been in there for that environment, Jake, I had goosebumps for the entire second half. It felt like a home game at Rupp Arena. it was electric, and I'm
Yep.
glad that the fans were able to witness that.
Yeah. As far as like any big picture stuff, not really outside of what we've already talked about, just how important obviously Lowe is and how much better this team can be with him. I mean, back to the defense, like it was another pretty eye-opening defensive performance. Again, they scored 66 with 27 made free throws. Like that's pretty impressive in today's era of college basketball, and a team that was averaging 87. I'll keep saying it, but
Dude, St. John's got into the bonus with 14 minutes left in the second half.
I know. Believe me, I was I was pretty annoyed at some of the calls, but like I just think defensively, and then you've talked about it with Ortega and Colin, like the defense kind of sparks their offense. Like I think that's just going to be this whole team. If we can go out there and play good defense, it'll lead to some of that more fast-paced stuff we've talked about, and we saw in the second half against Indiana, and then obviously the second half here. I just think there's a world where this team can be really, really, really good defensively, and that can lead to some easier offense, and you can go out and score 50 plus and a half. And that's obviously I think going to be the recipe. But I mean, big picture is just how night and day I feel and this entire fan base feels from Gonzaga 2 weeks ago to now.
I mean, the sky was falling after the Gonzaga game.
It was on the ground.
It
We were
was
picking it up. But now we got a 6'11", 18-year-old man putting the pieces back together up there.
What did Michael Jordan famously say? The sky is the roof. Like, I mean, this is what that's basically what it felt like for us. And Jake, I'm so glad to just be sitting here talking to you in a positive light. Having so much fun doing this, because those games after these podcasts after the Gonzaga game and games like that, it's just like
dreading it.
Dreadful. I'm like, Jake, what time do you want to start? And you're like, do we have to? And I'm like, yes, we do. we have to start, but
I don't wanna.
We got one more game before these guys take on for their long Christmas break. Jake, what do you want to see, if anything? Like, is there any? Obviously, this game's at 1:00, so it's going to be even tough for us to watch. We're both working men out here, so it's going to be tough for us to watch. Is there anything that you want to see? Is there any? Do you want to not play JQ? Is there any big thing that you want to say? Like anything in regards to this game?
Honestly, I probably lean like don't play Jalen, just because you see just how easily it could probably be tweaked. So any chance you have to where you don't need him on the floor, because like you mentioned, we got Bama coming up start of January. Like once January hits, you're going to need him on the floor every minute he can play. So I'd be fine sitting him and making sure. I don't care if you wrap him in bubble wrap for the next 2 weeks. Like do it. So yeah, I would actually probably cheer if they don't play him. JQ, I think you can still play him. I don't know if he needs to go play that 30 minutes we talked about, but just kind of continue to get him back in basketball shape. And I mean, hell, it looks like he's already there, but continue to get some run under him and build all that up. I mean, as far as everything else, man, Bellarmine's really, really, really bad. I mean, this is going to be, again, one of those 300 net teams. Like, I don't care which 5 you put out there, you're probably going to win by 25 plus. So I guess for me, like, maybe see Cam Williams knock down a couple shots at Rupp, because that's like the one place we haven't seen him make it. So maybe if he can, make a couple there. And I mean, that's really it. I think you're going to kind of cruise no matter what.
Yeah, nothing about what I'm going to say is pertaining really to this game, but you mentioned it. Everything's about health with this team. Yep. You only play 3 games over the next 15 days. So I do want to see Jalen play a little bit, because I don't want him to go from the 20th of December all the way until January 3rd without playing with this team in a game atmosphere. So I'd like to see him get out there at least a little bit, just to try and run up that lineup that we think is going to be the starting lineup. And then outside of that, man, it's just which one of these guys wants to step up? Is it Colin? Is it Denzel? Which one of those two? Because right now, I think we're at the point, and even throw Jasper into that mix. Which one of those 3 can take the more minutes you think they're probably going to get against Bellarmine? make a little bit of it and, build that momentum going into the Alabama game. Because really, you mentioned it, Bellarmine is terrible. Just get out of here without injuries, and I think I'm good.
Yep. I mean, just again, take care of business. But I think you could probably even play like Trentino at 35 minutes, and you're going to win this game by 25 plus. I mean, this is not a very good team. So yeah, just find a way to keep your fingers crossed and get out of there healthy.
Jake, you know what's crazy, man? We're about to have like a full week without a podcast. I feel like I do one of these with you every other day almost. So from me to you, Merry Christmas to Miss Kate and the girls. Merry Christmas to all of Big Blue Nation. For the Cats Talk podcast, Cameron Johnston, Jacob Boyers. Follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. The Facebook, Jake, the Facebook. We've found our niche with the Facebook community. Follow us on there as well. Big Blue Nation, Merry Christmas. We love you here. Go Big Blue.
Merry Christmas, BBN.